love to tell ourselves the biggest lie in the history of human suffering. I'm only hurting myself. It's the addict's mantra. It's the battle cry of the man or woman with unresolved trauma who refuses to go to therapy. We think that because we are the ones consuming the substance, or because we are the ones dealing with the wound, that nobody else is going to be affected. We believe the damage is contained within our own skin. But physics doesn't work that way, and neither does biology. I'm speaking to you today as a recovered alcoholic who is 4 years into the work. I'm speaking to you as a man who has sat in a therapist office every week for a year, finally measuring the distance of my own crater. See, I was that guy. I had the 6-figure job. I had the house in the nice neighborhood. I had the structure that looked bulletproof from the street. And I used every bit of that success as a shield. I used it to tell the people I loved that they were crazy for seeing the fire. In the lab, we don't use pretty words. We use forensic ones. When a bomb goes off, the casing is destroyed. That casing is you. But the shockwave? That shockwave travels. And it doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care that you didn't mean to. Tonight, we are talking about the blast radius. We're going to look at the research that proves your private pain was actually a public health crisis for everyone who loves you. We're going to look at why your brain physically stopped being able to see the people you were hitting. I've walked the perimeter of my crater. Now it's time that you walk yours. Let me talk to my high achievers in the audience. The honor students, the athletes, the captains of the college team, the MBAs, the CEOs, the ones the teachers loved. The ones that grew up with straight A's and spent their lives in AP classes and honors programs. And I will admit, in high school, I was not one of you. I had no concept of a future. People were talking about going to Yale and Duke, and I had posters of Motley Crue and Metallica on the walls of my bedroom, and the only thing I wanted to do was be in one of those bands so I could drink and do drugs and party around the world. But a couple years later, I was one of you. I was the Dean's List student. I'm a member of 2 honors societies. I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing with honors. But at the same time, I was taking Xanax and drinking whiskey and blacking out, writing A papers for microbiology. I was drinking way too much and driving home from a party at 2:30 in the morning, making one of my poor friends follow me all the way home just to make sure I didn't kill anybody or myself. I was the person where if you went out with me drinking, you didn't know what you were going to get. You didn't know if I was going to be the fun one that night, if I was going to be happy. You didn't know if I was going to start some bullshit with somebody. You didn't know if I was going to be saying inappropriate things or doing embarrassing things, embarrassing you. You didn't know if I was going to insult you. You didn't know if I was going to be the one in the corner crying about some nonsense. And I was also the one where, I didn't claim to have a problem with certain drugs, or any drugs really. But if they were around, I was going to take them. Oh yeah, I was going to take them. I wouldn't look for them, but if it was around, I was going to take it. Oh yeah. But on the outside, again, I was doing okay because I could show you all these accomplishments. I could show you all these achievements, just like you could probably show me right now. And you think that because you're still checking these boxes that your fire isn't real, that the bomb hasn't gone off, that there is no blast radius. You think a master's degree or a fancy zip code is a certificate of sanity. It's not. It's just high-end camouflage. I spent years saying pretty words. I spent years gaining material achievements. I spent years playing the chameleon, moving through different rooms, playing success story, while my foundation was rotting. Why do we do this? Well, there's a psychological concept called cognitive dissonance. When your internal reality, whether it be addiction or trauma or something else, doesn't match your external image, the degree, the job, the fancy zip code, your brain has to work overtime to bridge that gap. You start to believe your own resume. You look at your bank account and think, well, a real addict lives in a gutter, not a 4-bedroom house in a cul-de-sac. But success is the ultimate hiding place. You used your trophies to decorate the walls of a house that was already on fire. You used your status to gaslight your partner. When they tried to tell you that you were slipping, you pointed at your graduate degree as proof that they were the ones with the problem. But in the lab, we stripped the paint off the walls. We look at the forensic data of trust. A fancy degree or a 6-figure salary doesn't buy back the damage that the fire caused or that the bomb caused when it went off. Because, see, while you were managing optics, your loved ones were breathing in the soot. Now we have to look at the biology. Why couldn't you see the look on their faces when you hurt them again and again? Well, there's a region in your brain called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. This is your social brain. It handles empathy, moral judgment, and perspective taking. It's the part of you that allows you to feel the weight of your actions on someone else. But when you are operating out of unresolved trauma, unresolved wounds, or addiction, your amygdala, your lizard brain, hijacks the system. It performs a resource reallocation. And it decides that empathy is not a luxury you can afford because you are in survival mode. Research shows that chronic substance use actually thins the gray matter in these areas. You literally lose the hardware required to see your partner's pain. This is the dopamine empathy trade-off. Your brain is so focused on the next hit or the next way to numb the wound that it mutes your mirror neurons. These neurons are the cells that allow us to reflect the emotions of others. So your mirror neurons went dark. You became a black hole, pulling everything into your center. You weren't just ignoring the people you hurt, you were biologically blind to them. But here is the not pretty truth. Just because you had a broken compass doesn't mean you didn't drive the car into a crowd of people. To simplify that, you may have had a broken compass. You may not have known what you were doing. You may not have been able to physically see it. Because guess what? There's a lot of stuff that I did. There was a lot of ways that I thought. There was a lot of ways I behaved. There were a lot of things I said. And it didn't connect how damaging it was. But guess what? Guess what? It doesn't matter because I still hurt people. I still did hurtful things. I still caused damage, regardless of whether or not I was conscious of it. Now we're going to get into the social blast radius. As I said earlier, I know what it's like to be the chameleon. I had different friend groups. I could drop into any room and be the life of the party. I could be the good guy. I could be the success story. But eventually, the bullshit starts to catch up with you. And people start to get tired of it. And instead of cleaning up the mess, what do? We jump. Whether it's friends or relationships, we come into people's lives like a tornado. We drop in with all of our crap. And we let people fall in love with a version of us that isn't real. We let people fall in love with the mask that we choose to wear. We say all the pretty words while we are burning the bridge. And there's a darker layer to this, and it's called emotional sabotage. See, when things get too real, when people start to see behind the mask and ask adult questions, intimacy becomes a threat. True communication requires you to be seen, and being seen is terrifying when you're hiding rot in your foundation. So you don't communicate. No, you detonate. You sit on your feelings. You bottle them up. And then you wait for some type of legal loophole. You look for a trivial excuse. And I've done this, so I'm also speaking from experience. I did this to somebody back in the fall of 2024. And I was a couple years into sobriety at that point, and this was before I started therapy. And I came in like a tornado, saying all the pretty words, using fast attachment language, saying this is so different from anything I've ever experienced before. You're so special. You're this, you're that. And then some type of fear stimulus was introduced, and I didn't say anything. I kept making this person believe that everything was fine, but on the inside it wasn't, because I wasn't being an adult. I wasn't communicating what I was feeling. I refused to be vulnerable. I refused to let her see behind the mask. And then I grew distant. I asked for space. But see, here was the thing about taking that space. I already knew what I was going to do. I already knew I was going to break it off. And I remember the night before I did, this person asked me to communicate. They asked me to talk about it. They asked me to hear them and where they were coming from. They asked for an adult conversation and for a chance to be heard. What did I do? Well, the next morning, I said something along the lines of, I just don't think we're on the same page. I think you might like me more than I like you. I think you're a great person, but I don't want to continue this. And then I blocked her on everything. I never gave her a chance to talk. I never gave her a chance to say whatever it is she needed to say or wanted to say. I refused because my mind was shut to any possibility that it was anything that could have been worked through. And discussing it was out of the question. So what did I do? What would you call what that was? Because there is a term for it. It's called a discard. That's what it's called. See, because again, we look for that trivial excuse, right? You want to call it a fear stimulus, you want to call it a trivial excuse. Or if you want to call it a trivial excuse because of a fear stimulus that was introduced, that might be the better way to say it. I'm not too, good with all of the technical back and forth all the time. But I'm just telling you my experience. A fear stimulus was introduced. I sat on it. I didn't talk about it. I didn't communicate it. And then I looked for a trivial excuse. Maybe you've done that too. Maybe there's somebody out there that can identify with what I just said. But here are some more examples of what that legal loophole could look like, of what that trivial excuse could look like. A missed text, a minor disagreement. And what do? We use it as a reason to pull the rug out from under them, which is exactly what I did to that poor woman who didn't deserve my bullshit. But I fucking did it. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I didn't learn that till I got into therapy. And that was a couple years into sobriety. And I was still pulling that bullshit. because, as I already said, she wanted to be an adult and talk about it. What did I do? I shut down. I denied her a voice. And then I removed her from my life like she never existed. Because why? Because for people like us, people that are addicts and alcoholics, people that have unresolved trauma, people that operate from their wounds, people that refuse to do the work, people that refuse to go to therapy, people that refuse to give recovery a try, people that refuse to rebuild their life in any sense. You don't just have to want recovery. You might be listening to this podcast and you might be like, well, I don't have a problem with drugs and alcohol. And you might not. But something may have happened to you in your childhood that you refuse to talk about. Something may have happened in relationships from years ago that really negatively affected you. And you think you can just TikTok and Instagram your way out of it by watching a bunch of inspirational reels instead of actually doing some work. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm rambling. I do recognize that. I get fired up about this stuff. I'll tell you why. Because I had this same thing happen to me on the flip side of it. Someone came in. They were all about using all kinds of pretty words and talking about a future together, and they were so convinced. They convinced me with their words. I bought in. It was short. Didn't last that long. And what happened was the same thing that I did to somebody else. Some type of fear stimulus was introduced. They didn't communicate their feelings about it. All of a sudden, the rug was pulled out. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't give me an opportunity to say things from my viewpoint. And then it was terminated. And see, when I did it to this poor person back in 2024, I remember thinking to myself after it was over, I was like, oh, wow, I dodged a bullet. I would laugh about it for months after that, even in therapy, even in my course of being in therapy. Times would go by where I would chuckle about it and laugh about it, and I'd be like, oh my God, I dodged a bullet. And maybe you do that. Or maybe you act sad. Maybe you act sad. Maybe you post statuses about being misunderstood, or how, you still miss them, or how you never stopped loving them, and whatever you might post. I'm not quite sure. All I know is from my experience, I didn't act sad. I act like I dodged a bullet. So everything that I just explained and rambled about is called relational strip-mining. We aren't looking for partners. You aren't looking for a partner. You're looking for fresh fuel sources because you've burned through everyone who already actually knew you. Now, we are coming to the end of this episode, but I want to leave you with the heaviest research of all. This is called secondary traumatic stress and epigenetics. Your private fire has left chemical marks on the DNA of the people of your house. Research from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine shows that extreme stress can alter gene expression for generations. You aren't just hurting your kids' feelings. You aren't just hurting your partner's feelings. You are potentially altering the way their nervous system handles stress for the rest of their lives. You've turned your home into a minefield where your loved ones live in hypervigilance. Their cortisol levels spike just because they hear your keys in the door. They are breathing your smoke every single day. 4 years into recovery, and I can tell you, you don't fix that with a pretty apology. Trust is rebuilt by radical predictability. You have to be the most boring, consistent person in the world every single day. So now you have some homework if you choose to do it. This is what I'm going to call a forensic audit. Number 1, who breathed your smoke? Number 2, whose DNA did you stress out? Number 3, whose trust did you treat as a disposable utility? Number 4, who did you discard because they got too close to the truth? Write the names down. Walk the perimeter of your own wreckage. Because you can't rebuild what you refuse to measure. I'm Kyle Stapleton, and this is not supposed to be pretty, but it is the only way out of the crater.